descended on Germany when a member of the German women's 400-meter relay race, pride of the fatherland, dropped the baton. The jubilant crowd, sure of another gold medal, saw victory turned into tragedy and defeat. The girls proved they were genuine women by bursting into tears on the field.
Did you catch that? The girls proved they were genuine women by bursting into tears on the field. But we'll come back to that later. Let's see who won the race.
Helen Stevens was the key member of the winning American team.
Helen Stevens. Ever heard of her? She was once the fastest woman runner in the world, and she was from Fulton. She won 2 Olympic gold medals in the 1936 Berlin Olympics, had a sketchy encounter with Adolf Hitler, and this was all at the age of 18. But even at 68, she was only 4 seconds slower than her 1936 record when she competed in the Senior Olympics. In fact, she never lost a race. She was the first woman to create, own, and manage a semi-professional basketball team, paving the way for countless women athletes. So why isn't she more recognized? Was this the Olympic diary?
This is the Olympic diary, 1936.
That's Sharon Kinney Hansen, and we're at the State Historical Society in Columbia, Missouri, looking through the Helen Stevens collection.
Look at these, they're huge.
Sharon is Helen's only authorized biographer who studied many of these items, putting together the detailed life story for her book, The Fulton Flash. Logging over 70 interviews with Helen herself, they grew to become close friends up until Helen's death in 1994.
Helen knew what she wanted to be when she was young. She wanted to be an athlete. She wanted to get a job in that area. That was atypical for a girl. The best she could do was join a basketball team that the church offered because her school did not have any athletic programs for girls.
It was while Helen was playing on the basketball team that the Fulton High School's track and field coach, Coach Moore, observed Helen's incredible speed and intense competitive nature. Coach Moore decided to test her athletic capabilities by gathering a group of girls to run the 50-yard dash. To his surprise, Helen ran the dash in just 5.8 seconds, which was the world record at the time. Shocked at this discovery, he had her run it again. 5.8 seconds. His stopwatch wasn't broken. He had just discovered an athletic prodigy. From there, as you can imagine, Coach Moore did everything in his power to shape Helen into the star competitive runner he knew she naturally could be. After some pushback from the superintendent, who wasn't keen on sending a young girl to such a publicized race, Helen was entered to compete at the National Amateur Athletic Union at the St. Louis Arena. Although a complete beginner, 17-year-old Helen was confident, even among the seasoned Olympians who would also be at the race, including Stella Walsh, who was the first woman to run the 100-yard dash in under 11 seconds. A native to Poland, Stella was nicknamed the Polish Flyer and was a crowd favorite. That is, until Helen entered the game. With first-place wins in the shot put and standing broad jump, the bets were on as Helen lined up against Stella in the 50-yard dash. Helen took the lead, and victory was hers in just 6.6 seconds.
At the end of the finish line, the reporter rushed up to her and said, "You know what you've just done?" And Helen, using her Midwestern drawl on purpose, "I think I won," she said. She knew who Stella Walsh was, but she had said, "Who? You just beat Stella Walsh." Who? And she knew who Stella was because she had a picture of her in her room and she was throwing darts at it. She intended to beat her, and she did.
It's the definition of an underdog story. Helen had become famous overnight with newspaper headlines, attention from elite athletic clubs. She was even thrown a ticker tape parade on what Fulton High School declared Helen Stevens Day. And of course, being hailed her famous nickname, the Fulton Flash. Having proved herself a natural champion, she was an obvious choice to join the U.S. Olympic women's track and field team. But as Helen kept up her rigorous training, there was growing controversy over where the Olympic Games were being hosted.
This is Helen Stevens speaking.
This audio recording of Helen was collected by the St. Louis Kaplan Feldman Holocaust Museum in 1984 as part of their oral history project. Helen wasn't Jewish, but her experience during the Berlin Olympics was worth collecting.
President Roosevelt did not want us to go to Berlin. He was opposed to it because of the policies of Adolf Hitler.
Was well known at that time, I
Well, let's say, I think it was published, but people tended to shrug it off and say, it's none of our affair, it's not our business. That's their problem.
But, of course, Helen and the U.S. Olympic team still attended. She claimed the athletes earned a right to compete regardless of any political connotations. And while we're on the subject, before we get into Helen's gold medal wins, let's talk about her encounter with Hitler. During the Olympics, Hitler became known to invite certain winners after their events into his private booth where he watched the competitions. Helen was most likely the only member of the U.S. team to receive the invitation. As press caught wind of these intimate meetings, a photographer snuck in and snapped a picture just after Helen greeted Hitler with a good old-fashioned Missouri handshake. And when I say intimate meetings, I mean Helen recalls Hitler making a pass at her and even inappropriately touching her.
He had his troopers that were around him protecting him throw him out and grab his camera, but somehow the film made it.
And that caused some controversy.
Yes, it did.
Because they, they see this picture. I think she was asking for his autograph in the picture.
Yes.
And, to people doesn't send the right message.
No, but the fact is she was getting autographs of everybody that she could, as was the custom then. Autographs were big. And can you imagine what that little booklet might be worth today?
It's true. Helen requested autographs from almost everyone she met. J. Edgar Hoover, Jesse Owens, and even her arch-rival, Stella Walsh. Ever since Helen outran Stella in St. Louis, there was growing tension and anticipation for the two sprinters to face off again. After a couple no-shows from Stella for a rematch prior to the Olympics, it was finally time to prove whether the feat was a fluke. And of course, Helen won. Not only did she outrun Stella that day, she stripped her of her world record title by running the 100-meter dash in 11.4 seconds.
Can you imagine? An 18-year-old, she must have felt glorious. She was nervous, she said, on top of it, standing on the podium when she was being crowned and given the medal and so forth. Her knees were knocking, and she was very proud. And she stomped Stella again, which was her goal.
Helen was on top of the world. She was welcomed back to the United States with parades and parties and mobs of fans. Coming back to Fulton, however, swiftly brought the celebrations to an end.
When she came home, one of her girlfriends sent her a page from the Look magazine that had a fold-out, and in it was Helen running in her stride. And underneath Helen's picture was, "Is this a man or a woman?" That's what started the whole, let's call it a decline in Helen's morale.
It wasn't just Helen who was facing controversy over her gender. Remember this clip? The girls proved they were genuine women by bursting into tears on the field. During the Olympics, it was customary for the women athletes to get physical exams before competing to ensure they were, in fact, the gender they claimed. Most women athletes could brush it off, but here was the problem for Helen: she was a lesbian. She had been having romantic relationships with women for years by this point. Controversial for that time, but Helen never suspected it would affect her athletic career. But of course, it did. At the time of the Olympics, Helen was attending William Woods University on an athletic scholarship. But when word got out about the article in Look magazine and rumors of late-night female visitors, she was called into the president's office where he called her an embarrassment to the university, revoked her athletic scholarship, and forced her to move off campus. But Helen was resilient, and the university clearly came to realize her important contributions to the field of athletics by naming their sports complex after Helen.
I talked to Helen about how, I did not want to out Helen. I wrote the book when gay people were in the closet, and Helen was in the closet all her life. And I did not want to be the one to out her. I wanted to tell her story, her contributions to women in the field of athletics, which is what I did. But after I got into the book quite deeply, I said, we cannot leave out Mabel.
Mabel was Helen's life partner of 40 years. And although their relationship was known to the people closest to them, they didn't want it to be widely publicized. But Helen included details of her romantic life in her diaries, and as Sharon said, she couldn't tell Helen's story without including those details because, after all, it was part of her identity. After some time playing professional basketball and softball, Helen met Mabel in the early days of what would turn out to be her long career as reference librarian at the Aerospace Center in St. Louis. But she always maintained her athletic involvement and was ultimately inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 1993. What do you hope people learn from Helen?
Well, I want them to recognize that she was definitely the pioneer in women's athletics. There were others, but Helen stayed in the game all through her life. She was in the Show Me State Games, the Senior Games. She was the self-appointed secretary for the Midwest Olympic Committee, raising money for other women to go to the Olympics. She gave clinics free without cost in St. Louis for young aspiring Olympians, women. She was advocating politically, writing letters to her legislators, trying to help the women get what they deserved, respect and entrance into the games. It's a different generation. I guess we have to expect that. Not everybody enjoys history, right? But women athletes should know her name.
For Living St. Louis, I'm Brooke Butler.